Hi, and welcome to One Game Dad. This is episode 11, The Irony of Isolation. This is also my second attempt at it. Previously, I was playing The Witcher 3 and getting far too distracted by the story, which is actually why I play the game. And that ultimately doesn't make for a very compelling game. It's, yeah. It's one that is, well, frankly boring. And, yeah. It's, well, from boring in terms of I am talking and being distracted by what's been said. So I figured that I would switch over to Destiny 2. And talking is, well, it's not just vital to the podcast, it's something I want to do. It's something I find myself throughout the day wanting to have conversations, and being alone with my daughter, I'm not having those conversations. Yeah, I can very much, like this podcast, talk to her. You know, it's an audience, but there isn't that feedback. And I can work through some of my thoughts, but there's none of that give and take of an adult conversation. And being a stay-at-home dad, I find myself very much desiring that, to talk about something more than, oh, look at your toys, or reading her a book. I mean, I love doing all of that, but it's not satisfying. And as the day goes, I find myself wanting to just to have conversations, to talk about things, to make this podcast, to make my other podcast, Startup Hell, with Keith and Alan.
We have a unique opportunity.
And I want to do that because I feel like
Cade 6. So
I'm
glad you could join us.
Of course you are. Listen, Guardian, we've got a unique opportunity. Tell him, Dev.
The Red Legion's
I'm
looking
completing
for
something.
power systems
I'm
in
working
place.
towards
For
something.
limited time, they've switched to backup generators.
Which means they'll have beefed up the security.
I can handle that part. Red Legion troops in the area will have security keys. Get me enough of those and we're in.
It's, yeah, I'm wanting to work towards something. And the fact is that I'm not, by simply hanging out with my daughter. And at the same time, it's like, okay, I should be talking. I should be saving some of this.
That's enough to synthesize a new access code and get us inside.
You can make a key by shooting bad guys? I gotta talk to my ghost.
The
I should
Legion's a
be
bit paranoid about security. That code won't last long.
The best things never
I should be on social media. I don't really have the time during the day. And the fact is, in the evenings, I'm too exhausted. Taking care of my daughter, while fun and delightful, it's also isolating, and that's part of why I'm wanting to have these conversations. But it's something that I just
Force field down, but there are more. A lot more.
This is getting too complicated. Isn't there anything you can, you know, blow up?
Actually,
Guardians.
I just I want to okay. My struggle with social media is the fact that you're meant to have conversations, regardless of what it's on. And there are people out there I'd like to talk to. I'd like to have these conversations with. I mean, I don't want to just promote what I'm doing.
we're in trouble. Their defenses are linked to the alarm system.
Oh, smart. I mean, oh no.
If they are connected, deactivating the barriers should buy you time before the alarm sounds.
But it's I never feel like I'm accomplishing much in having these, in being on social media. It's not like playing a game like Destiny where, okay, you have your daily task list. And that doesn't make me feel like I'm accomplishing anything. Okay, maybe I could set a goal of gaining more followers, and that would probably be a smart thing, but at the same time, I feel like more often than not, I'm speaking into the void. And that gives me no pleasure. Again, I don't feel like I'm accomplishing anything. And
That's the last one. And I've got a read on those backup generators ahead.
because I'm tired, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do something where I'm not accomplishing anything. You know, I want to make this
Never get to see the good stuff.
podcast in part because that leaves me feeling like I've done something. And yeah, I want to be working towards something. But I never feel like I am. Social media ends up making me feel more isolated, which itself is an ironic thing because it's meant to connect us, and yet it's doing anything but. It is doing the opposite in a lot of cases. It's, I mean, I don't use Facebook a lot because
Finally,
what do I have to say there?
take them out, and the sudden power loss should overload all the connected systems.
Wish I could be there for the explosions. Never get to see the good stuff.
I just... Yeah. Oh. The few ways I have of reaching out and talking to people because of my time alone.
Did something explode? Was it an explosion? How was it?
Finally, our real target. Take them out.
Leave
Sudden
me.
Power loss should overload all the connected systems.
Wish I could be there for the explosions. Never get to see the good stuff.
Leave me feeling more isolated. And I mean, this is the irony I'm talking about.
Wow. Cabal technology does not handle power fluctuations well.
Did something explode? Was it an explosion? How was it?
Oh, it was fine. Nothing special.
I'm also not doing terribly well in this fight. It's... Yep. Yeah, sorry, I was just...
Wish I could be there for the explosions. Never get to see the good stuff.
No. What's up? Where? Okay, yeah. I'll... Yeah. No. Okay, I'll finish up and then I'll come join you. Chickens. Yeah, no worries. I'll see you in a bit. Bye. Sorry about that. Phone call with the wife. Yeah, I love making things. There's a satisfaction to accomplishing something. And the...
Wow. Cabal technology does not handle power fluctuations well.
Did something explode? Was it an explosion? How was it?
Oh, it was fine. Nothing special.
What was it? I was listening to a podcast, Ditch Diggers, which is about the business of writing. And, you know, in that they're talking about, or they were referencing some research about the use of apps and how people feel. And social media ends up leaving people feeling really bad. I mean, so do games. Which is not the great irony here, but oh boy, I died again. It's social media and things that aren't actually productive. So if you're reading, if you're making something, that's when
Wish I could be there for the explosions. Never get to see the good stuff.
those are the times when you feel good about your use of social media.
Wow. Cabal technology does not handle power fluctuations well.
Did something explode? Was it an explosion? How
And
was it?
Oh,
it
was fine. Nothing special.
it's just interesting to see to read that. Oh boy, I died once more because I'm really sucking with this new weapon and ammo form. So I'm gonna have to change. Go back to the
Wish I could be there for the explosions. Never get to see the good stuff.
yeah. It's yeah. The purpose of that, yeah, the meditative apps, reading the, not social media, but reading a book, reading a magazine, and even the news, as dour as it can be, listening to podcasts, those
Wow. Cabal technology does not handle power fluctuations well.
those
Something
were the
explode?
things that
Was it an explosion? How was it?
Oh, it was fine. Nothing special.
those were the apps that left people feeling good overall. And I have to agree with that. Social media doesn't do that for me. Social media leaves me feeling more and more isolated than... Oh boy, wow, that's a really tough level. It just... I don't feel like I get anything out of it. And yeah, I have Twitter, I have Facebook, I haven't gone on Instagram. Here I am podcasting and live streaming to
Wish I could be there for the
the
explosions.
equivalent of no
Never gets
audience.
good stuff.
And I mean, having no audience doesn't actually bother me in for this podcast, which
Cabal
is
technology does not handle power fluctuations well.
interesting,
Something
like,
explode? Was
because
it an explosion?
I mean, ostensibly, I
was
should
fine.
be
Nothing special.
looking to have more of an audience. But I don't, and that doesn't... None of that bothers me. And that's okay. It's... it's not something I find myself caring so much about. I mean, yeah, it'd be great if I did. Maybe I would have more conversations online. But when I hear of people who are spending, like they're not writing, they find themselves wasting time on social media. I find myself wondering how, because it doesn't engage me. It is something where it's like, okay, I am not producing anything here. I'm not necessarily having not having a conversation with people a lot of the times. It's just, yeah. I don't know, it's an empty thing. Social media is, yeah, it doesn't do much of anything for me, and I just don't understand how people are losing all this time to it, because it is something I very much struggle with. Yeah, maybe that's good. In some ways, it's bad in others because of the very fact that I should be having conversations. I should be working on, growing my audience so that, when I do have something more to show, people are there to read, to listen, to watch. But at the same time, I am so much more interested in just producing.
Not wild about that one. What do you think, Dad?
I think you should stick to the clever turns of phrase. Their actions speak louder than words, especially yours.
And yet,
I ain't the jerk here.
it is,
I suppose.
and an irony of today's world that you have to do something to get ahead, to not just have an audience, but to be known within your field. And it's just not enough to produce. And the production side is what I love doing. If I could offload everything else, I would very quickly just be like, okay, that's yours to handle. And I would be happy with that. But yeah, it's not. It's something that I have to think about from a very practical standpoint in terms of, you know, treating production as a business. And, you know, I've been the head of communications for projects. I've run such things, and then I get it. But at the same time, I've been able to give directions to others and offload it to them. Well, in part because it was working in a language that wasn't mine,
Ikora will be pleased.
but
Guardian, I need you
it
to
was something that
find
I
a power
didn't
core in a
have
disabled
to.
Red Legion tank. Install it in a supply console and stand back.
It wasn't something I had to be actively worried about, because I wasn't the one directly interfacing with it. It was just making sure that my team was on target and doing everything they needed to. And that's pretty easy. You know, I theoretically, I understand what is necessary. I mean, I can provide guidance, I can do it, but from a personal standpoint, I don't enjoy it. I do want to have conversations with friends. I want to have in-depth talks about about production, about whether it's writing or stories.
Well, that was as good as advertised.
The Red Legion has brought a new weapon online. One powerful enough to threaten the farm and everything around it.
But it's... yeah, those parts of, you know, modern life are just things I'm not interested in, and I know that's something I have to just accept, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. And you know, my position being a stay-at-home dad means, like, okay, social media really should be one of my means of reaching out, but the fact is, it's not. It's...
While you're in transit, I'll try and fill in the gaps. Back in the city militia, we used to see the Fallen try to repurpose technology from other
I can go
races,
on and on about this.
and fail rather explosively.
Conversations with Deborah
This fact that I'm isolated and that
The
I want to
Cabal are
talk,
made up of many
but
different
then
races. They have always
the
struggled
moment
to
I have the
adapt
chance
a
to,
single
I
technology.
don't. And that's
I'm not sure
totally
I
on me.
understand.
But I would much rather have a
Never
personal
seem to be
conversation
finished with this base.
with
Where
someone,
do we start?
face to face. That's
That
why I
new weapon is an
enjoy...
artillery cannon, too big for you to blow up. But you could exploit that weakness.
That's why I
What we've
enjoy
observed, the munition power cores
making
are only exposed during recurring
podcasts,
maintenance
because I
windows.
get to have a
Then I
conversation
suggest you force a maintenance window.
with some friends, or that's why I enjoy this. Not just because I get to play games, but because I'm getting to do something more. And so, yeah, it's, yeah.
Glimmer mining group.
Shut them down.
it's yeah, it's something I'm going to have to deal with in terms of my future with making things, whether it's games or making writing stories, producing podcasts. I'm always going to have to just accept that there are aspects to it that I don't like, and I don't know if it's acceptance, but just find a methodology that works for me. And it's, yeah, it's just something that I've been thinking about recently because,
Glimmer, hold them off while I transmit this.
yeah, there are conversations I want to have with people. I mean, conversations that, like, say my wife, for example, isn't interested in having, and that's because, well, maybe it's about video games, you know, something that doesn't interest my wife, or, you know, story structure. You know, she writes, but she doesn't write stories. She writes blog posts, and these are just these are simply the reality of, well, me repeating myself an awful lot. And yeah, I don't know, because I don't have an audience, I'm torn between this idea that I need to focus on building one and just building something for them to consume.
My word, you'll have to keep some for yourself, you know.
Which is why ultimately I think, you know, making podcasts, writing the games, all of those things are what's most important. Everything else just doesn't matter. Like, the audience will come when there's something to actually show. Just trying to be on Twitter and have a conversation isn't good enough. I think lots of people start from that side and try to build something without having anything to show. And that's not how I want to work. I don't see that being truly effective. I mean, okay, you can talk about writing, you can talk about startups as we do on Startup Hell. But if you don't have something to show for that, if you're not contributing more...
Unlocked. Now to expose the power cores, I need to override the maintenance schedule.
What then? And... it's... It's something I've been concerned with, because well, it's just something I've been thinking about in my isolation. And so I just... yeah. I want to make things. I want to talk to people. And that's the funny thing. Some of what I'm wanting to make is about having a conversation, but I just don't feel like there's that to have on social media. A podcast, you know, more permanent, something that is a lot more isolated, oddly, without that feedback until later, is something I want to be making, want to have. And maybe it's because I'm selfish and wanting to direct the conversation more about the topics that interest me. And that's... well... that's not entirely untrue. Aren't we all selfish? Don't we all want to talk about ourselves? But in doing something like a podcast, rather than social media and trying to advertise, I'm providing something people of value without just being like, hey, look at me, look at everything I've made. And so I'd like to think I'm better as a result. I'm doing something more. But I mean, the real question is, am I? I don't know. It's a hard thing to say. And this podcast in particular has gone on, it's been rambling. It would be a lot better if I had other people engaged in that conversation.
That artillery cannon will be offline for minutes. I mean weeks, I think.
The Cabal never were very good at details. Good thing for us.
This is another step to ending them for good. Well done, Guardian.
Yeah. So I guess maybe in the future it's something I should work on. Could have my little brother on. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Sorry about the interrupted episode with a phone call. I'm not going to cut it out because I'm lazy like that. But if you like what I can do, please be sure to like, share, rate, and review, either on iTunes or YouTube or even Twitch. You can find everything I do at onegamedad.com or on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch at onegamedad. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.